Hi guys, welcome. And who dat? I'm Joe. Thanks for tuning in to Rosenfield 10, where I cover our beloved Bless You Boys in black and gold, the New Orleans Saints. If you're a Who Dat fan, subscribe to this channel. Subscribe right now. It's free. You'll have a fellow Saints fan in your subscriptions. Anytime you want to hear about the Saints, I have a video. Watch the video, you hear what I'm talking about, then you tell me what you think about it in the comments. I respond to my comments. And today we're going to take another look at the roster, specifically the defense, and we're going to talk about some of the questions that remain on defense. I did a video breaking down the defense last week, but let's take a further in-depth look at the defense and all the different scenarios that could possibly come out of this. Let's see where we're at. Yeah, the draft's over and rookie minicamp is this week, and the Saints have made a few signings, but other than that, I'm not sure how much is left to do. I mean, there's a chance we bring Cam Jordan back to add to the defense, but other than that, I don't know. We're still kind of waiting to see what's going to happen with Alvin Kamara, and as soon as any of that we get clarity on any of that, then that'll be news. But really, other than that, I think the Saints are pretty much set up and ready to go. There's always going to be a few additions, and there's going to have to be subtractions if there are additions, because we do have a full 90-man roster now. I'm going to pull up the offense right here real quick. We've still got Alvin Kamara there under contract. He just did an interview on Teron Armstead's show, and Alvin Kamara seemed excited about joining Travis Etienne and being a dual threat backfield. And Kamara acts like he's part of the team still. He still says us and we, and can't wait to get back in town and hook up with Shuck. And so it seems like Kamara's going to be the man. He's going to be the man in the backfield with Achane. So the only other questions we really have on offense is, how's the bottom of the wide receiver roster going to shake out with all these new additions? And then we have the offensive line. I think Cesar Ruiz is going to end up the starting right guard, but I guess there is a question as to whether Jeremiah Wright could beat out Cesar Ruiz. And then, of course, the question of who's going to occupy the depth on the offensive line. Yeah, that's kind of like your major questions on offense. If you want to consider the quarterback situation, if you want to talk about the chances of the Saints trading Spencer Rattler, I don't think that's going to happen unless some team is desperate and calls with an outrageous trade offer. But so not as many questions on the offense. Alvin Kamara comes back, then you're kind of trying to settle the running back room. And then your wide receivers, I think you're pretty strong up top with your new draft picks and Jordan Tyson and Bryce Lance to go along with Chris Olave and Devon Vele. I think those four are set in stone on the roster. And then Jalen Polk is probably that number 5 guy. And then your number 6 guy is a question whether that's going to be a return specialist or, something else. And then, the depth on the offensive line. That's your offense. Let's pull up the roster on the defense. This is where it gets tricky. We still don't know exactly who's going to be the nickel back. People are leaning towards Julian Blackman. We've also got Martin Emerson on the roster now, proven starting cornerback. Is Emerson going to be good enough to beat out Quincy Riley or Kool-Aid McKinstry? Well, we've got Yadam and Emerson as depth pieces on the outside now. And I think that makes us 4 strong on the outside, depending on if Yadam can improve in this system. And then you've got the draft pick, TJ Hall, who wants to factor in there. Rajon Wright, still a leftover from last year's 53-man roster. He wants to factor in at outside corner as well. And then, of course, the big question of nickel. Who's going to play that nickel? Blackman is the guy right now, but we don't really know. There could be a safety there. There could be a cornerback there. There's going to be, I think, a lot of questions that won't be answered until training camp because I think the coaching staff needs to see, who plays best where and how they're comfortable, not only with the new pieces, but with existing pieces that may be asked to do different things now that Alontae Taylor's not here. The linebacking core, especially in the middle, not really a lot of questions there. I think your starters are going to be Werner and Caden Ellis, but Caden Ellis, if he's featured as an edge rusher, is going to leave the middle linebacker spot open for somebody else to step up and get those middle linebacker reps, which we all assume is going to be Danny Stutzman, and we all love Isaiah Stallbird on third down. So I think we're really good at linebacker. The only question is, how will the middle linebackers look when you're asking Caden Ellis, to rush from the edge? Then you look at the outside linebackers, edge rushers, and yeah, we've got a lot of bodies there. A big question whether Cam Jordan comes back or not, but look at it. I mean, Chase Young, Carl Granderson. Then you've got the new guy in Tyree Wilson. You've got the new guy in Anthony Jennings. And then you pick up a stud and Haldeman as an undrafted guy. Yeah, and then you add Cam Jordan in the mix. If that happens, there's going to be some questions there. How is the rotation going to look? You're not going to re-sign Cam Jordan and then keep everybody here, including Chris Rump. So yeah, a lot of questions on defense. And to me, besides nickel, I think the biggest question is how is this defensive line going to shake out? We've added a bunch of pieces. So we get undrafted guy Silver, who's a nose tackle. We get undrafted guy Suggs, who is 300 pounds, probably play all along the line. You've got a returning piece in Vernon Broughton, who we never really got to see a lot of. He only played in one game before he was out for the year. And he can factor in all along the defensive line. Same goes for Christian Miller, our new draft pick. And I've got Miller listed here on this big depth chart as a defensive end, but everybody talks about Christian Miller as a nose tackle. Well, Vernon Broughton can do that too. And it's not just that we got two undrafted defensive tackles to add to the mix, along with Miller, our second round pick, but we also re signed John Ridgeway, who can play all along the defensive line. And then we decide to be the team to give a chance to Xavier Harris. Undrafted, should have been a fourth round draft pick, at least. I mean, some people had him ranked in the top 100. I had him around 120, 100 to 120, a fourth round kind of guy. Nobody wanted him because of the off season stuff. And from what little bit I've heard from Ole Miss coaching staff, it doesn't seem like they're really propping that guy up. I mean, they just, the comments I heard were, I just hope Harris finds a good situation where he can stay out of trouble, kind of thing. And the trouble was bad. Two different instances of run ins with the law in 2 different years. But he played last year. No telling how any of that stuff was resolved. It's hard to find online, but Harris did play all last year. I liked Harris as a player. I think he's just 6'8", 330 pounds. He's just a mountain of a man. When you put him in the middle of the defensive line, it might take three guys to move him, and then that frees up everybody else. So it's a lot of different options you're putting at the deep on the defensive line, especially at nose tackle. When you consider you have Davin Gottschall, then you've got Christian Boyd, and that's his main position, nose tackle. And then you've got this guy Silver that's undrafted. That's definitely a nose tackle. You got John Ridgeway who can play everywhere, but he plays nose tackle. Then you've got Vernon Broughton and Christian Miller who can play nose tackle. And now you go and grab Xavier Harris, who can play basically along the defensive line, but he's built to be that nose tackle. This might be pointing towards an end for Davin Gotchaw on this team. And if that happens, I'm not sure how much it costs the Saints. I know if he stays on the team, his cap hit's going to be about it's over 7 million. And if we cut him, I think the dead cap hit is like around 5 million, something like that. So you're going to be paying a lot for Gottschall, whether he's on the team or not. It seems to me like with all of these bodies and bringing in more, I mean, we were kind of set, and then we go and get Harris, and so maybe the undrafted guys don't really have a chance. Maybe this coaching staff wants to move away from a player. I'm thinking Gottschall, but maybe it's Boyd. Maybe they're going to see what Vernon Broughton and Christian Miller can do, and then maybe they'll cut ties with Ridgeway. I mean, Izzard's got to be gone, and then there's a guy named Cole who can play on the line too. He's got to be gone, and then if you go in a even man front like a 4-man front, you've got Tyree Wilson at the edge that can put his hand in the dirt, and yeah, you've got a lot of options there. It's wild. It's wild because I think if you keep everybody that's on this list, then you can have so many different fronts. If Davin Gotchaw stays on the team and he's your starting nose tackle, I think on early downs your defensive ends would be Vernon Broughton and Christian Miller, and that'll give you three good run-stopping defensive linemen on early downs: Christian Miller, Davin Gotchaw, Vernon Broughton, and then on third down you bring in Brissett. Maybe you slide Broughton to nose tackle or Christian Miller to nose tackle, and then you bring Brissett in. Nathan Shepard factors in as a solid guy that can play all three downs. Defensive line is the biggest question for me. Now, this is the way I imagine our starting lineup on defense is going to be. I think this is the way everyone figures it's going to be. Christian Miller will end up being the nose tackle, and Brian Brissett and Vernon Broughton will be your ends. And, Nathan Shepard will be there instead of Broughton if Broughton's not ready, to be out there all the time to be considered a starter. But so you figure Nathan Shepard rotating in with Vernon Broughton, Brian Brissett. I'm starting to think a nose tackle like Harris, if we keep Harris, or Silver, if we keep Silver. One of those guys could be your nose tackle. Christian Miller could get some play at the end until you bring Brissett in. So yeah, there's a lot of options. So my biggest question to you is who's on the outs on this defensive line? I'm thinking Davin Gotchaw. I'm thinking we're just going to let Gotchaw go. I mean, it's going to cost us some money, but maybe it'll save us money after June 1st. Let me know in the comments if you guys know anything about that from what I saw on the contract. There's going to be a dead cap hit either way. So well, I mean, we're either going to pay him or we're going to get a dead cap hit. So let me know. But I'm thinking this might be the way the defense is. You'll have Blackman as your nickel, and then you can slide Ellis over to one of the edges at any time and pop in either a Stutzman or a Stallbird there. Stutzman or Stallbird can take Werner's place in the middle. Your edge rushers, Young and Granderson, and then whoever rotates in, probably Wilson, maybe Cam Jordan. And then you've also got Jennings and then Ellis if he decides to rush. And you still got Chris Rump there too. And then, yeah, you're starting cornerbacks, Riley and Kool-Aid McKinstry. Let's see if Emerson's good enough to get the starting job ahead of one of those guys. If you go into a dime look, you've still got Jordan Howden. Yeah, and then maybe we have a rotation at that star too. Blackman is a very good deep free safety. So I just feel like We're going to see how good he is at star. Health, please, please, Blackman, just stay healthy all year because I think he's a playmaker wherever we put him. Yeah, big questions still remain on defense. And when I did that video last week, that was before we added even more bodies at the defensive line. So to me, the defensive line, besides whoever's starting at nickel and how that outside cornerback situation is going to work out, man, the defensive line is just, it's a question. And with all of the pieces we have, it could be a pretty good unit. Heavy rotation, a lot of healthy, fresh bodies out there on a regular basis. And I think, we've improved against the run with a lot of the additions we have. So instead of Christian Miller at nose tackle, maybe Xavier Harris makes the team. Maybe he is a force. Maybe you want him out there, and then Christian Miller can be at that end instead of Brian Bresee until it's a passing down. Or if you go into a four-man front, yeah, then Harris will be in the middle there with Miller, and then Broughton and Bresee. And if Broughton doesn't have as much of a pass rush as you're hoping, then maybe you slide in a Wilson or a Nathan Shepard. Lots of questions. You guys let me know what you think about the defensive line, about the defense in general. Let me know what you think about the offense. And since there's not a lot of stuff newsworthy going on, probably for the next month, I might only be doing one video a week. But I've covered everything. And yeah, I'm not the one that comes out with the news reports and lets everybody know what's going on. I get my news from other sites like everybody else, and by the time I post a news item, it's not news anymore. So, but I'll continue to show you the roster. I'll continue to give you the updates. Here's something before I let you go that nobody else explained. When we signed Xavier Harris, the defensive tackle, this week, nobody explained how we made the roster move, how we made the roster spot. Because once we signed Emerson, it got us up to 90 and or 89, yeah, 90. And then when we signed Harris, I'm thinking, well, we had to cut somebody. Well, actually, we didn't cut anybody. What happened was we've once again placed kicker Charlie Smith on the international pathway roster exempt slot. So in order for him to play in the game, he had to be placed on the active roster. But he is still eligible this year, apparently, to be kept on that roster exempt slot until he's needed. So that's what happened. So technically, Charlie Smith is a roster exempt, but still on the team, and that allows us to have the 90 players. So we're going to see, I think, after this rookie camp, maybe if we make our minds up about some people, we'll let some people go, and then that'll free up some spots to go and get some more players. We're still keeping an eye out on whether we get Cam Jordan or not. And that's where we're at right now. Subscribe to Rosenfield 10. I love the Saints as much as you do, and I'm going to let you know as much as I can. And I'm also going to give you some stuff to look at because this is a YouTube channel and not a podcast. And you guys let me know whatever you want me to know. And until the next one, I'll talk to you later. Who dat?